In this video, we're going to be reviewing the Canon R5C and why I decided to invest in this over something like the Canon C70 or other cameras that are similar to this, and honestly answer if it's been worth it the past couple of months. If you're new here, I run a real estate media business here in Houston, Texas, and funny enough, up until this point, I've only ever had one camera. So instead of constantly renting another camera for these content shoots that we do, or buying a second Canon R6 Mark II, which is what's filming me right now and is great, I decided to pull the trigger on a more video-oriented camera, and the Canon R5C, specs-wise, and a couple of reviews that I saw, checked all of my boxes. So let's find out if it's worth it in 2024. So like I mentioned, up until this point in my career, I've mostly done just single video shoots or single photo shoot or real estate shoots where I only needed one camera. Rarely would I do more extensive video shoots where I needed multiple cameras, and if I did, I would just rent one. Now getting to the point where we're doing these content shoots on a monthly basis for a bunch of realtors and real estate teams in my area, it only made sense to finally pull the trigger and invest in a second body, and I really just wanted something that was more video focused, full frame, and overall a small setup. Okay, so first and foremost, let's talk about the video that this camera produces. It is the sharpest image I've honestly ever seen out of any camera, and sharpest because of that 8K sensor. And the great thing about it is you don't have to shoot in 8K to get that crispy video. Simply shooting in any of the other video formats, like I just use the 4K, and it looks crazy sharp compared to other cameras. And it's so great because I thought that I would have to shoot in those higher resolutions to get that really crispy footage, but that's not the case whatsoever. It looks really good in the 4K. You can reformat it, you can crop in, and it still looks really good. Another big thing is that they enhanced the dynamic range over firmware updates. I really don't know how that's possible, how they really did that, but in my opinion, it's more than enough for what we do. Even though you are limited to C-Log 3 unless you're shooting RAW, it's plenty of dynamic range for real estate work, video production work, social media content. Unless I was gonna be shooting movie stuff or short film, higher end commercials, then I can understand why you do need something like the C70, but honestly, there's plenty of dynamic range, and it's not like I'm ever looking at the image like, man, I wish it had more. Another thing I do want to mention is you never have to deal with any overheating because it has a built-in fan, so that is a major plus, even though I never really ever have dealt that with my R6 Mark II. Really had to deal with that almost constantly with the R6 Mark I, sold it, traded it in for the R6 Mark II, and now this one, so I can confidently use both of these on longer extensive video shoots and they don't overheat whatsoever. Another reason I was really drawn to this camera is because it has shutter angle. And I really like that because you can't cheat. It forces you to actually do things correct from a video perspective. You can't just crank up your shutter. You have to use NDs, or you have to narrow down your aperture, or you have to open up your aperture. And so it's one less thing to worry about, one less tool that you're not supposed to even adjust in the first place. Whenever you're doing video, you want to keep your shutter locked. And so having that is great because now it just lets me focus on every other aspect like lighting and aperture. Another thing I really like about the Canon R5C is it has DCI 4K. If you're not familiar with that, it's shooting a wider 4K than your regular 16:9, which is 3840 by 2160. You can actually shoot 4096 by 2160. And if you're wondering, how does that help? What's the benefit? Well, it's great because you just get even more of your frame. You can compose it a little bit, sliding it either left and right on a regular 16:9, or if you're shooting vertical, which here's another big perk, you're actually going to be shooting 2160 by 4096, so you're getting longer on the top and bottom, so you can format your frame even better. It just helps in every way possible. So having that bigger field of view, I've actually been exporting some of our video projects in that 4096 by 2160 aspect ratio, and it looks really great online. Another thing that drew me to this camera was that it has dual native ISO. So it has a base ISO of 800 and another one at 3200, which is perfect for real estate because we're always dealing with low light scenarios. And so I can honestly say, coming from the R6 Mark II, which was already really good low light performance, I virtually never see any noise on this camera, any of the footage coming from this camera, if I expose it correctly. And of course, having all of the upgraded exposure tools like waveform and false color makes it that much easier to get your image tack sharp and exposed properly. So I honestly always, if possible, shoot at either base ISO 800, or if I'm in a low light scenario, bump it up to 3200, and that's pretty much all I stay at. and it's been working out great. Another thing that really drew me to this camera was the fact that it does have the cinema operating system that you get in the C70 and all of the other cinema cameras. So much more capabilities. Obviously, it's so much more video focused versus the adapted photography mirrorless operating system that we're used to. So having the cinema operating system in here is great. There is a bit of a learning curve, but I feel like it's so much more intuitive towards video. You know, having things like the waveform, which you can click on it, make it bigger. This is an accurate map exposure-wise of your scene, and it's so much more accurate on how you can expose versus the histogram that we're used to. You also get false color, which is another really great way on how you can expose your image. And so simply using false color and waveform, you can always get a properly exposed image in whatever lighting setup you're dealing with versus just having the histogram on these other cameras. And lastly, the other big major perk about the video that this camera can do is, of course, the RAW capabilities. You can shoot up to 8K RAW in the camera. You don't have to externally record it to an Atomos or something like that. And the image, of course, is fantastic. And the great benefit about that is if you shoot RAW, you get C-Log2 whenever your computer interprets that footage. So you can grade it with C-Log2 conversion LUTs. In my opinion, it does look a little bit better than C-Log3. Wish you could access C-Log2 just shooting regular 4K MP4 files, but you can't. But in my opinion, it's not a big drawback because it still looks great and you have plenty of dynamic range. But I feel like this camera got a lot of hate in the beginning because they were like, oh, I'm gonna shoot everything in 8K. And here we are in 2024 and I'm shooting everything in just the regular 4K modes and it looks fantastic. I feel like I don't have to shoot in the 8K, but it's there in case I need it, which I might in the future. Now, to be able to easily work through the footage coming out of the R5C, even the 8K RAW, you need a fast SSD like the Lexar SL600. Excited to have them the sponsor of this video, but I can honestly say that I've been using this very drive, this one right here, for the past 6 months, and I can say that it is really fast and really reliable. Two most important things you want out of an external drive. To give you some insight, whenever I go do a shoot, I offload it off my SD card onto this, and then I work off of this drive. This is my working drive. Once that project is complete and it's delivered to the client and it's all good, I move it from this drive to another one, a much slower hard drive, and just store it in case I have to revisit it in the future or anything like that. But I keep all of my current working projects on this drive and everything is just so fast, there's no lagging. It's been great, especially the fact that it offers superior performance, giving you 2000 megabyte read and write speeds, which is perfect to edit off of. It features a durable aluminum enclosure with a sandblasted finish and added protection with shock and vibration resistance. So in case you drop it, you're still gonna be good. And lastly, it includes Lexar's Data Shield, which is a 256-bit AES encryption software solution to protect your files. So if you're interested in picking up a super fast, slim, and reliable SSD, head to the link in my description to check it out. Thanks again to Lexar for sponsoring this video. Now back to the review. So now let's talk a little bit about the photo side of this camera, because funny enough, I bought this camera primarily for the video features, and the whole photo side of it, which is a complete functioning R5, has just been a big giant bonus, and I'm so thankful for it because I've been putting it to good use. So if you flip over to the photo side, because you have photo, off, and video, it honestly is like a true hybrid camera. You get the cinema operating video side and then the super fast, same menu that we're used to, same mirrorless operating system on the photo side like a regular R5. The biggest benefit I immediately notice about using this camera is whenever we do headshots. For example, we do some headshots for a local real estate team where we have to take them from like mid-body up because we have to deliver a full photo and then a cropped in headshot. So that might work with like a 24 megapixel camera, but it's not gonna look the best once we crop in to shoulder height. And so having the R5 taking those photos on this has been great because the cropping capabilities still make it look so good once we punch in, crop in, and now they can get a full-size photo and a headshot. And the battery life, everything that you're used to on the Canon mirrorless side is exactly the same on here, which is really great because it's like you have two cameras in one. And if you're getting a lot of value out of this video, you should think about joining my community. Last year, I started a community for real estate photographers, videographers that are trying to grow their business. It is so awesome because we built such a tight-knit community that is growing every single day where everyone can ask questions, get feedback, learn things. Along with that, you get access to a behind-the-scenes video series that I post on a monthly basis, exclusive exclusive to the members, and you get access to a digital welcome pack of some of my most used digital assets like LUTs, presets, some audio effects, and things like that. So if you're interested, check it out in the link in the description. It's only $5 per month to join. And now let's talk a little bit about the body and the build of this camera, because like I mentioned, it's exactly like an R5. This whole section is just like it, but you have this extended viewfinder, you have the fan vents here, you have a fan vent here. The great thing is it feels just as comfortable to hold. It's not a heavy camera. This honestly looks almost exactly like any other mirrorless camera. Just the fact that it has this extra 1 inch attached to it is not a deal breaker, doesn't affect me anyway. It feels great in the hand, especially on here or on a gimbal, whatever setup you're doing. And I also really love, just like any other camera, you have full customizable buttons where you can make everything, like your white balance button, how I had the waveform, the false color, zooming, digital stabilization, face tracking, face only mode. All of that stuff is customizable, which makes it really good because I've set it up exactly on how I would use it, all the tools that I constantly use in the middle of shooting. So it's definitely a lot more customizable than your regular mirrorless camera. And speaking of the customization, I love the cinema menu because you have so much more capabilities, so many things that you can go in. Honestly, that might be almost like a bit of a learning curve coming from the mirrorless system, but you have so many options to go through. Anything you can think of customizing, it is in here. And honestly, I spent almost like the first day or two just going through the menu system, looking at other reviews, looking at the manual, anything I could find, because there's so many things you can customize. But that's honestly why I really wanted this, not simply being limited by the regular mirrorless operating system that we have in these cameras, which are mostly photo-based settings adapted to video, not like this where it's actually for video. So now let's jump into a couple of drawbacks, which the very obvious one that most people know about and probably why they got turned off by this camera, which is the battery life. As you can see right now, it shows 26 minutes remaining, which is pretty crazy because it has 3 bars. The battery life was something I was definitely worried about, but honestly have found a very solid solution, and it's never been a problem since I figured it out. Obviously, if you plan to use this as just a small handheld rig with no other power solution, you're probably going to be swapping batteries constantly, but this is what I did. I simply attached a V-mount battery to my gimbal because this is primarily what we shoot on, whether it's short form content or real estate video work. And having this V-mount battery on here connected to a USB-C cable powers the camera all day, and it's even better because now I never have to worry about switching batteries or anything like that. And if I have a half day or even a full day video production shoot, this V-mount battery is gonna last all day. This one is by FJ Dynamics. I'll link it down below as well, but any V-mount or battery solution is gonna work just the same. And then the great thing is too that on the photo side, you get the regular battery life that we're used to from all the other mirrorless cameras. So it doesn't drain it like it does in video mode. But again, I feel like if you have a solution like that, you're gonna be just fine and not ever have to worry about it. The next major drawback that I really wish it had, it doesn't have built-in ND filters, which is a bummer because something like the Canon C70 obviously does. You can click through the different NDs, easily adapt it to your scene, and not worry about having to use things like this. And so this is the only solution I've had right now where I either have to use a variable ND filter or something like this. This is by KNF Concept. It's the Square Filter System Pro. I made a video on this. This is pretty cool, but essentially you have different square filters that you can use. Here's your circular polarizer filter, and then you can put something else in front like a fixed ND, and that would be your solution. That way you can keep your shutter angle correct, and then you can just adjust your aperture and lighting to whatever you need. But mostly I've just been using the variable ND filter, especially when I'm filming outside, and that way I can keep my f-stop at like f2.8 to like f5.6 versus not using one where I'm having to sit at like f10 and up. And so that's not really ideal. I don't really want to be shooting at those apertures. So using a variable ND has just been the solution for that. Last major drawback that I kind of mentioned is the fact that you only have technically C-Log 3. You can get access to C-Log 2 if you shoot in RAW. Obviously that's not ideal, especially for regular video projects. I'm not going to be shooting in 8K RAW for short form videos or regular listing videos. It has to be a very high-end video project that requires a bunch of color grading for me to do that, to justify the space and shooting in 8K RAW. So it is a bit of a bummer that you don't get C-Log 2 like you would on the Canon C70, where you could use the regular 4K MP4 and shoot in C-Log 2, not have to shoot RAW. So that I wish you could do that on this camera. It's like that could be an easy firmware update. Don't know why, but it is what it is. Okay, so final thoughts. Overall, this is a fantastic camera, but I feel like it has to fit your needs. For example, if you don't necessarily do real estate and you do more video production work, a Canon C70 might be the obvious right answer for you. But for someone like me that wanted yet another true hybrid camera, I'd honestly say this is more of a hybrid camera than something like the R6 Mark II, because you get all of the same photo capabilities and all of the true video capabilities like you do in the cinema operating system. So that is definitely one main reason why I opted in for this, along with the fact that this is overall a small package. It's still just like a mirrorless camera, not like the bigger C70, which is still small compared to like the other cinema cameras that they offer. But just the fact that I can mount this on a regular gimbal, no problem. And because I can use my 15 to 35 for almost everything, whether it's real estate work, short form content, talking head scenes, pairing this with this camera has been an amazing combo, and this is pretty much the whole setup that I constantly use all the time. And lastly, I feel like this camera is future proofing itself. When it first came out, 8K was ridiculous, then other cameras started doing it, and even right now in 2024, at the time of filming this video, I'm still not shooting stuff in 8K, but I used to say that about 4K when I was shooting in 1080. My point being that as tech advances, maybe storage solutions become even easier, computer processors get even better, 8K might become the new standard or just really easy to work with, and so that's when I'll be able to tap into this versus having to upgrade yet again to something else. So I feel like this camera has definitely future-proofed itself, and why I chose to invest in it along with everything else, and I can honestly say it is worth it if you're thinking about it, and this checks all of your boxes and a couple of drawbacks don't really affect you, or you can work around them. It's definitely been worth it, and I would recommend it 100%. So I can honestly say using this on every job, I've been really happy with it, and just excited to keep shooting more this year with it. So that's it for this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed, comment down your thoughts, subscribe if you haven't already. I would love for you guys to be part of the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.